What if Qui-Gon trained Anakin Skywalker? Let's explore the depths of this scenario in the video. The crimson blade hisses through the air as Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber spins in deadly arcs. The weapon moves like a living thing, extensions of the Sith Lord's rage and hatred given physical form. Each strike carries with it the weight of 1,000 years of Sith tradition. The accumulated malice of the dark side flowing through the Zabrak warrior's tattooed frame. Qui-Gon Jinn parries desperately, his breathing heavy as the Sith Lord drives him back through the Naboo power plant. His green lightsaber meets each attack with precision born of decades of training. But even a Jedi Master has limits. Behind the laser barriers, Obi-Wan Kenobi watches helplessly as his master faces the demon alone. The young Padawan's hands press against the energy field that separates them, his blue eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. He can feel his master's pain through their bond, can sense the way Qui-Gon's strength slowly ebbs with each passing moment. The barriers flicker and pulse in their endless cycle. A technological heartbeat that marks the seconds until his master's potential doom. Qui-Gon's robes are singed from near misses, small burns marking where Maul's blade has come too close to finding its mark. Sweat beads on the Jedi Master's brow as he gives ground step by step, his boots scraping against the polished metal floor of the power complex. Each parry sends vibrations up his arms, the impact of Sith fury against Jedi serenity, creating ripples in the Force itself. Maul's yellow eyes burn with hatred as he presses his advantage, sensing victory within reach. The Sith apprentice has waited years for this moment, trained his entire life for the chance to spill Jedi blood. His movements are fluid and predatory, like a Nexu stalking its prey through the jungles of Cholgana. The double-bladed lightsaber whirls overhead before slashing downward in a strike meant to cleave Qui-Gon from shoulder to hip. The Jedi Master barely manages to interpose his blade, the green and red energy crackling where they meet. For a moment, Master and apprentice are locked in a contest of pure will, their lightsabers humming with barely contained power. Qui-Gon can feel the dark side flowing through his opponent, can sense the raw hatred that fuels Maul's strength. But there is something else there too, something the Sith Lord himself might not recognize: pain, loneliness, the echo of a child torn from his family and molded into a weapon. Then, in that crucial moment, as Maul draws back for what should be the killing blow, something changes. The laser barriers that have separated Obi-Wan from the fight flicker and deactivate a split second earlier than their programmed cycle dictates. Perhaps it's a malfunction in the ancient Naboo technology, or perhaps the Force itself intervenes to alter destiny's course. Whatever the cause, the effect is immediate and decisive. Obi-Wan doesn't hesitate. He launches himself forward with the Force, his body becoming a blur of brown and tan as he crosses the distance in a single bound. His blue lightsaber ignites mid-leap, the familiar snap hiss echoing through the chamber as coherent light springs into existence. The surprise intervention catches Maul completely off guard, his attention focused entirely on delivering the death blow to Qui-Gon. Instead of the fatal thrust finding its mark in the Jedi Master's chest, Maul must whirl to defend against this new attacker. His double-bladed weapon spins upward to block Obi-Wan's descending strike, the impact sending sparks cascading through the air like falling stars. The moment of distraction costs the Sith Lord dearly, breaking his rhythm and allowing Qui-Gon the precious reprieve he needs. The older Jedi Master steadies himself, drawing on the living force that flows through all things. He can feel his strength returning, aided by the presence of his beloved Padawan and the shift in the battle's momentum. His green lightsaber moves with renewed purpose, no longer merely defending, but seeking to end this confrontation, once and for all. Maul finds himself caught between two skilled opponents, his advantage of surprise and superior position suddenly neutralized. He snarls in frustration. His mechanical legs, a reminder of his previous encounter with Kenobi, carrying him in a rapid series of strikes meant to keep both Jedi at bay. But fighting two opponents simultaneously is a different challenge than overwhelming a single tired adversary. Qui-Gon's blade finds its mark first, slicing deep into Maul's side and drawing a scream of rage and pain from the Sith warrior. The wound is serious but not immediately fatal, cauterized by the lightsaber's energy, even as it cuts through flesh and bone. Dark side energy crackles around the injury as Maul calls upon his hatred to push through the pain. But wounded and outnumbered, even a Sith Lord cannot prevail against two skilled Jedi working in harmony. Obi-Wan's blade follows through on his master's attack, his precise Ataru technique finding gaps in Maul's increasingly desperate defense. The young Padawan's training under Qui-Gon has prepared him for this moment, his connection to the living force guiding his movements with preternatural accuracy. The end comes swiftly. Maul's double-bladed lightsaber, damaged in the fierce exchange, sparks and fails at a crucial moment. Both Jedi strike simultaneously, their lightsabers crossing in an X pattern that the Sith Lord cannot possibly block. Darth Maul, the weapon of vengeance crafted by Darth Sidious, falls to the metal floor with a resounding clang that echoes through the power plant like a funeral bell. Master and Padawan stand over their fallen enemy, breathing heavily from the exertion of battle. Qui-Gon places a weathered hand on Obi-Wan's shoulder, pride and relief evident in his blue eyes. The bond between them pulses with shared triumph and the deep satisfaction that comes from surviving a trial by fire. "You arrived just in time, my young apprentice." Qui-Gon's voice carries a warmth that speaks to years of partnership and mutual respect. The Force works in mysterious ways, and I suspect this moment will echo through the years to come. Perhaps this is a sign that young Anakin's path need not be walked alone. That destiny itself can be changed when wisdom and courage stand together. Obi-Wan looks puzzled by this cryptic statement, but his master's mind is already racing ahead to the implications of their survival. The boy who could be the chosen one will need guidance. Yes, but not the rigid training the Council would traditionally provide. He will need someone who understands the living force, someone willing to bend the rules when compassion and wisdom demand it, someone who has just proven that even destiny can be altered when the Force flows through willing servants. The political aftermath of the Battle of Naboo unfolds much as it did in the original timeline. But with one crucial difference, Qui-Gon Jinn survives to advocate for Anakin Skywalker's training. The Trade Federation's invasion is repelled, Queen Amidala reclaims her throne, and young Anakin's piloting skills in the space battle earn him recognition as a hero. But it's what happens in the days following the celebration that truly matters. Weeks later, the Jedi Council chambers echo with heated debate. The circular room, with its tall windows overlooking the endless cityscape of Coruscant, has witnessed countless discussions about the fate of potential Jedi. But few have been as contentious as this one. Qui-Gon stands in the center of the chamber, his tall frame unwavering, despite the disapproval radiating from several of the assembled masters. Young Anakin Skywalker stands beside him, trying to appear brave but clearly intimidated by the solemnity of the moment and the weight of so many ancient gazes upon him. The boy is too old, Master Qui-Gon. Mace Windu's voice carries the authority of his position on the council, but also a genuine concern born from centuries of Jedi tradition. His training should have begun years ago, when his mind was more malleable and his emotions less developed. At 9 years old, he has already formed attachments that will be difficult to overcome. Ki-Adi-Mundi nods in agreement, his elongated head tilting as he considers the young slave from Tatooine. The fear in him is strong, Master Jin. I can sense it even now, fear for his mother, fear of leaving everything he has known. Such emotions are the first steps toward the dark side. We have seen what fear can do to those strong in the Force. Too dangerous. This path, Island Yoda's voice, weighted with 900 years of accumulated wisdom, seems to settle over the chamber like a blanket of authority. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Much suffering. I sense in this boy's future, should we proceed with his training. But Qui-Gon remains unmoved by their objections, his connection to the living Force guiding him toward a truth the others cannot yet see. Master Yoda, with all due respect, the Force brought me to this boy. Not coincidence, not chance, but the will of the Force itself. His midi-chlorian count exceeds even Master Yoda's, and his achievements on Naboo were not the result of luck. He destroyed a Trade Federation control ship through instinct alone, saved an entire world through actions no mere child could accomplish. The debate that follows is unlike any the Council has witnessed in recent memory. Each master speaks their piece, voicing concerns that have been refined through generations of careful tradition. Adi Gallia worries about the precedent of accepting older initiates. Say-CT questions whether Anakin's mechanical aptitude might make him too focused on technology rather than the spiritual aspects of the Force. Even PL suggests that the boy's background as a slave might make him too eager to assert control over his own destiny. Through it all, Anakin stands quietly beside his would-be master, overwhelmed by the complexity of the discussion, but gradually understanding that his entire future hangs in the balance. He can feel the doubt and concern radiating from most of the Council members, but also something else, a deep current of compassion underlying their worries. These aren't cruel beings seeking to deny him opportunity. They're protectors trying to prevent suffering they've seen too many times before. Master Qui-Gon, even if we were to allow his training, your unconventional methods concern us. Mace Windu's words are carefully chosen, but their meaning is clear. You are too close to this situation, too invested in the boy's potential to provide the objectivity necessary for proper training. Perhaps Obi-Wan should take the responsibility. Your Padawan has proven himself capable, and his more traditional approach might better serve the boy's needs. Qui-Gon's response is immediate and firm, though still respectful of the Council's authority. No, Master Windu. Obi-Wan will indeed make a fine Jedi Master one day. But this boy needs something different. He needs understanding, not rigid adherence to rules that were made for different times and different challenges. The galaxy is changing. and our methods must evolve with it. The Jedi Master steps forward slightly, his presence filling the chamber as he draws upon decades of experience and wisdom. Anakin Skywalker is not merely another Force-sensitive child who might become a competent Jedi. If the prophecies are true, he is the chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force. Such a destiny cannot be shaped by conventional training methods. Obi-Wan, observing from his position near the chamber's entrance, feels a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in his master's convictions wars with concern about the path they're choosing. He has grown close to young Anakin during their brief time together, recognizing the boy's potential, but also sensing the turbulent emotions beneath his eager exterior. The young Padawan trusts Qui-Gon's judgment implicitly, but he cannot shake the feeling that they're stepping into uncharted territory. The debate continues for hours, each master raising points that must be carefully considered. Depa Billaba questions whether the boy's natural piloting abilities might make him too aggressive in combat situations. Yarael Poof wonders if his background of slavery might create resentment toward authority that would interfere with the master-apprentice relationship. Coleman Trebor suggests that Anakin's mechanical skills, while impressive, might make him overly reliant on technology rather than trusting in the Force. But Qui-Gon has an answer for each concern, drawing upon his deep understanding of the living Force and his intuitive read of Anakin's character. Yes, the boy has known fear and loss, but these experiences have also given him compassion for others who suffer. His mechanical aptitude is not a distraction from the Force, but another way of connecting with it. The Force flows through all things, including the machines he builds and repairs. His piloting skills demonstrate an unconscious connection to the Force that surpasses anything they've seen in generations. Master Yoda remains the most resistant to the proposal, his ancient eyes studying Anakin with an intensity that seems to peer into the boy's very soul. Clouded, his future island, much anger I sense in him, much fear. The path to the dark side, these emotions are dangerous. It would be to train him without certainty of his heart, but Qui-Gon refuses to be deterred. Master Yoda, you speak of the dark side as though it were an inevitability for this boy. But what if our fear of his potential fall becomes the very thing that causes it? What if by refusing to train him, we abandon him to face his destiny alone? The prophecy speaks of one who will bring balance to the Force. Perhaps that balance cannot be achieved through light alone. This statement sends a ripple of unease through the assembled masters. The idea that the chosen one might need to understand darkness as well as light challenges fundamental assumptions about Jedi philosophy. Yet there's something in Qui-Gon's words that resonates with the deeper mysteries of the Force. The ancient knowledge that the Jedi have sometimes ignored in favor of simpler certainties. The final vote is closer than anyone expected. Master Yoda's opposition carries enormous weight, but Qui-Gon's survival of the encounter with Darth Maul has given him a credibility that cannot be easily dismissed. If the living Force guided him to this boy, if destiny itself preserved his life for this purpose, then perhaps the Council must trust in something greater than their own wisdom. In the end, it's Obi-Wan's voice that tips the balance. Speaking from his position as Qui-Gon's Padawan, and as someone who has witnessed Anakin's potential firsthand, he offers his support for his master's proposal. If Master Qui-Gon believes this boy can be trained safely, then I trust his judgment. The Force has never led him astray before, and I don't believe it will now. The Council's decision is reluctant but unanimous. Anakin Skywalker will be trained as a Jedi, but under Qui-Gon Jinn's direct supervision, and with regular reviews of his progress. The boy's training will be monitored more closely than any Padawan in recent memory, but he will have the opportunity to prove himself worthy of the Jedi path. Anakin's reaction to the news is a mixture of joy, relief, and overwhelming gratitude. The weight of uncertainty that has pressed down on him since leaving Tatooine finally lifts, replaced by the exciting prospect of learning to use his abilities to help others. He bows deeply to each member of the council, his young voice steady despite his emotional turmoil as he promises to honor their trust and prove himself worthy of their faith. Qui-Gon places a reassuring hand on his new Padawan's shoulder, already planning the unconventional education that will follow. The traditional methods have their place, but this boy will need something more flexible, more attuned to his unique circumstances and extraordinary potential. The living force has brought them together for a purpose, and Qui-Gon intends to see that purpose fulfilled. The training begins immediately, and it becomes clear from the first day that this will be unlike any Jedi education ever provided. Where other masters would have Anakin spend hours in silent meditation within the temple's sacred chambers, Qui-Gon takes him to the bustling markets of Coruscant's lower levels. The cacophony of voices, the press of bodies, the constant motion of urban life, all of it becomes a classroom for understanding the living force. Feel the currents around us, Anakin. Qui-Gon's voice remains calm, despite the chaos surrounding them, as merchants hawk their wares and travelers from a dozen worlds jostle for position. The Force isn't found only in quiet temples or pristine gardens. It flows through every living being here, the Rodian trader negotiating for better prices, the human mother trying to keep track of her children, even the scavengers picking through discarded technology. Learn to sense their hopes, their fears, their dreams. That's where you'll find the true power of the Force. This approach initially confuses Anakin, who had expected lightsaber training and formal instruction in Jedi philosophy. But as days turn to weeks, he begins to understand his master's methods. By observing life in all its complexity, he learns to feel the intricate web of connections that bind all living things together. The Force stops being an abstract concept and becomes a tangible presence he can sense and eventually touch. Where other Padawans would be required to suppress their emotions, Qui-Gon encourages Anakin to explore and understand his feelings. You miss your mother. That's natural, Anakin, and nothing to be ashamed of. The Jedi teach that attachment leads to suffering, but I believe they misunderstand the nature of love itself. Love doesn't have to mean possession. Caring doesn't require controlling. The question isn't whether you feel these emotions, but how you choose to express them. These lessons resonate with the young boy in ways the traditional teachings never could have. Anakin's connection to the Force grows stronger with each passing day. But more importantly, his understanding of himself deepens. When nightmares of his mother plague his sleep, Qui-Gon doesn't dismiss them as unworthy of a Jedi's attention. Instead, he helps Anakin explore what these dreams might mean and how they can guide his actions. Your visions could be glimpses of possible futures, not inevitable destinies. The Force shows us these things not to torment us, but to give us the chance to change them. If you truly see your mother in danger, then perhaps we should act on that knowledge rather than pretending it doesn't exist. The Council disapproves when Qui-Gon requests permission to return to Tatooine, viewing it as an unnecessary indulgence of the boy's attachments. But the Jedi Master has learned to choose his battles carefully, and this is one worth fighting. He presents the mission as a training exercise, to study the effects of the Force in different environments, particularly desert worlds, where the living Force manifests in unique ways. Reluctantly, the Council agrees, though Mace Windu makes it clear that this is an exception rather than a precedent. Master Qui-Gon, the boy must learn to let go of his past if he is to embrace his future as a Jedi. We trust that this journey will serve that purpose rather than reinforcing his attachments. The return to Tatooine proves more eventful than anyone anticipated. They arrive to find Mos Espa much as they left it, but disturbing rumors reach their ears within hours of landing. Tusken Raiders have been more active lately, their attacks bolder and more frequent. Shmi Skywalker, now freed from slavery thanks to Qui-Gon's intervention but still living on the desert world, has been helping other freed slaves establish new lives for themselves. Anakin's reunion with his mother is emotional but brief, overshadowed by the growing reports of Tusken aggression. The young Jedi can sense something wrong in the Force, a disturbance that seems centered on the activities of the Sand People. His training under Qui-Gon has taught him to trust these intuitions, to explore them rather than dismiss them as mere feelings. Master, something's wrong here. It's like there's a shadow over the whole region, something dark and angry. Anakin's voice carries a new authority, the confidence of someone learning to trust his connection to the Force. The Tuskens aren't just raiding randomly. There's a pattern to it, a purpose I can't quite understand. Qui-Gon nods approvingly at his Padawan's perception. His training has progressed remarkably quickly, aided by the boy's natural sensitivity and willingness to embrace unconventional methods. Good, Anakin. Trust what you feel. The Force speaks to those willing to listen, but its voice often comes in whispers rather than shouts. What does your instinct tell you about the source of this disturbance? Their investigation leads them deep into the Dune Sea, following tracks and Force impressions that would be invisible to less sensitive individuals. Anakin's mechanical aptitude proves invaluable as they modify their speeder bikes for the harsh conditions, while Qui-Gon's experience with desert environments helps them navigate the shifting sands and treacherous terrain. They find the Tusken camp at sunset, when the twin suns of Tatooine paint the sky in shades of orange and red. But what they discover there defies their expectations. The Sand People have captured several moisture farmers, including some who were once slaves alongside Shmi. Among the prisoners, they find Shmi herself, injured but alive, her presence reaching out to Anakin through the Force like a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. But this time, armed with training and understanding, Anakin doesn't rush in blindly. Instead, he and Qui-Gon observe from a safe distance, studying the camp's layout and the behavior of their captors. The young Jedi's growing wisdom shows as he considers multiple approaches to the rescue, weighing the risks and benefits of each option. We could wait for them to sleep and free the prisoners quietly, Anakin suggests, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil of seeing his mother in danger. Or create a distraction on one side of the camp while we extract them from the other. Master, what do you think would minimize the risk to everyone involved? Qui-Gon smiles at his Padawan's thoughtful approach, recognizing the growth that has occurred since their training began. Your compassion extends even to our enemies, Anakin. That's a sign of wisdom. The Tuskens are acting from their own pain and fear, not pure malice. If we can address the root of their anger while saving the prisoners, we serve the Force more fully than if we simply overpower them. Their eventual approach combines stealth, diplomacy, and a small amount of necessary force. Using his growing skills in Jedi mind techniques, Qui-Gon creates confusion among the Tusken guards, while Anakin employs his technical abilities to sabotage their vehicles and weapons without causing permanent harm. When violence becomes unavoidable, they use their lightsabers to disable rather than kill, stunning their opponents and creating opportunities for escape rather than engaging in wholesale slaughter. The rescue succeeds with minimal casualties, and the reunion between Anakin and his mother is tearful but joyous. Shmi holds her son close, marveling at how much he has grown in the months since their last meeting. Her eyes shine with pride as she sees the confident young man emerging from the frightened boy who once built pod racers in Watto's junkyard. "I told you that you would come back to me, my son. And you have. But you're not the same frightened child who left Tatooine behind. You've become something wonderful, strong, and wise, but still kind. The Jedi have taught you well, but they haven't changed the good heart that was always yours." Anakin holds his mother close, feeling truly at peace for the first time since leaving his home world. But more importantly, the wound in his heart has been healed before it could fester into something darker. The nightmares that might have driven him toward the dark side fade away, replaced by the solid reality of his mother's safety and love. Qui-Gon watches the reunion from a respectful distance, satisfied that this crucial healing has taken place. The traditional Jedi approach would have left this wound to fester, telling Anakin to simply let go of his concern for his mother. But the living Force has shown a different path, one that acknowledges the importance of love while teaching how to express it without possessiveness or fear. The return to Coruscant marks a new phase in Anakin's training. Word of his success on Tatooine, his growing mastery of Force techniques, and his mature handling of a complex situation reaches the Council through Qui-Gon's detailed reports. Even the most skeptical masters begin to admit that perhaps this unconventional approach is bearing fruit. Obi-Wan, now nearing the completion of his own Padawan training, often joins their sessions when his duties permit. The young man who will soon face the trials has found himself learning alongside Anakin, gaining new perspectives on the Force from Qui-Gon's innovative teaching methods. The three of them form an unusual but effective training unit, each bringing different strengths and insights to their shared exploration of Jedi philosophy. "Master," Obi-Wan asks during one of their sessions in the temple gardens, "your methods with Anakin are so different from how you trained me. Are you changing your approach because of his unique circumstances? Or have your own views on Jedi training evolved?" Qui-Gon considers the question carefully, his eyes moving between his current and former Padawans. "Both, I think. Anakin's situation is indeed unique. His age, his background, his extraordinary potential all require special consideration. But my understanding of the Force has also deepened over the years. I've come to believe that our rigid adherence to tradition sometimes blinds us to the Force's true guidance." He gestures toward the diverse plant life surrounding them, each species adapted to different conditions, but all drawing sustenance from the same soil and sunlight. "Look at this garden, Obi-Wan. No two plants grow in exactly the same way, yet all are nourished by the same sources. Perhaps Jedi training should be more like gardening and less like manufacturing, helping each individual grow according to their nature rather than forcing them into predetermined molds." These philosophical discussions become a regular part of Anakin's education, teaching him to think critically about Jedi doctrine while maintaining respect for its wisdom. He learns that questioning traditions doesn't mean rejecting them, but rather understanding them deeply enough to apply them wisely in new situations. As months pass, Anakin's skills develop at a remarkable pace. His lightsaber training progresses from basic forms to advanced techniques, aided by his natural reflexes and growing connection to the Force. But Qui-Gon ensures that weapons training is balanced with lessons in diplomacy, healing, and the more subtle applications of Force abilities. Remember, Anakin, a lightsaber is a tool of last resort, not first choice. The greatest Jedi victories are achieved without drawing a weapon at all. Your ability to sense the emotions of others, to understand their fears and hopes, is far more powerful than any combat technique. Use that gift to resolve conflicts before they become battles. This philosophy is put to the test when they're called to mediate a dispute between two mining corporations on the mid-rim world of Sullust. The conflict has escalated to the point where violence seems inevitable, with both sides hiring mercenaries and making threats against each other's facilities. The planetary government has requested Jedi intervention before the situation spirals completely out of control. Traditional Jedi diplomacy would involve formal negotiations, careful neutrality, and appeals to reason and law. But Qui-Gon approaches the situation differently, bringing Anakin along as an active participant rather than a silent observer. Together, they spend days talking not just with corporate executives and government officials, but with the actual miners, their families, and the communities affected by the dispute. What they discover is that the conflict isn't really about mining rights at all, but about deeper issues of economic inequality and environmental damage that have been ignored by both sides. The corporations are focused on short-term profits, while the local population suffers from the long-term consequences of aggressive mining practices. Anakin's background as a slave gives him unique insight into the worker's perspective, while his technical knowledge helps him understand the industrial processes at the heart of the dispute. Most importantly, his genuine empathy for those caught in the middle of the conflict allows him to speak to their concerns in ways that formal diplomacy cannot. The solution they eventually broker is more comprehensive than anyone expected. Rather than simply dividing the disputed territory between the two corporations, they help establish a three-way partnership that includes representatives from the local communities. Environmental protection measures are built into the new mining contracts, while profit-sharing agreements ensure that the people most affected by the operations receive direct benefits from their success. The resolution takes weeks to negotiate and implement, far longer than a traditional Jedi intervention would last. But the result is a stable, long-term solution that addresses root causes rather than just symptoms. More importantly for Anakin's development, the experience teaches him that real peace requires understanding all sides of a conflict, not just imposing solutions from above. Your compassion for the miners reminded me of something important, Anakin. Qui-Gon reflects as they prepare to leave Sullust behind. Power isn't just about Force abilities or lightsaber skills. The greatest power comes from understanding others well enough to help them find common ground. Today, you learned something that will serve you throughout your life as a Jedi: the art of making enemies into allies. The success on Sullust, combined with Anakin's continued growth in all aspects of his training, finally convinces even the most skeptical council members that Qui-Gon's unconventional methods are producing exceptional results. When the time comes for Anakin to construct his first lightsaber, the normally formal ceremony becomes something entirely unique. Rather than simply traveling to the crystal caves of Ilum, Qui-Gon arranges for a more comprehensive journey that includes visits to several worlds where Kyber crystals can be found. Each location offers different challenges and different types of crystals, allowing Anakin to choose not just a focusing stone, but an approach to his relationship with his weapon. On Ilum, surrounded by the ancient ice caves where countless Jedi have found their crystals, Anakin experiences visions that show him possible futures. But unlike the nightmares that once plagued his dreams, these visions offer choices rather than inevitabilities. He sees himself as a protector, a teacher, a bridge between different worlds and philosophies. The crystal that calls to him glows with a blue light that somehow seems warmer than usual, as if reflecting the hope and compassion that have become central to his character. The construction of his lightsaber becomes a meditation on responsibility and purpose. Under Qui-Gon's guidance, Anakin learns to see the weapon not as a tool of destruction, but as a symbol of his commitment to protecting others. Every component is carefully chosen and attuned to his unique Force signature, creating a weapon that is truly an extension of himself. When the lightsaber is complete and Anakin ignites it for the first time, the blue blade hums with a clarity and strength that impresses even Qui-Gon. But more important than the weapon itself is what its creation represents. A young man who has found his path and committed himself to walking it with wisdom and compassion. The Clone Wars arrive with the same shocking suddenness as in the original timeline. But everything unfolds differently when Qui-Gon and Anakin face them together. The discovery of the clone army on Kamino, the emergence of the separatist movement, the assassination attempts against Senator Amidala, all of these events play out against the backdrop of a galaxy sliding toward war. But Qui-Gon's unconventional wisdom proves invaluable in navigating the moral complexities of the conflict, where other Jedi might blindly follow orders from the Senate. Viewing their role as soldiers in service to the Republic, Qui-Gon encourages Anakin to think critically about each mission and its implications for the people they're meant to serve. Something troubles me about this war. My young apprentice, the Jedi Master's voice carries a weight of concern as they stand on the observation deck of a Republic cruiser, watching the stars wheel past in hyperspace. The convenience of discovering a clone army exactly when we need one, the way events seem to push us deeper into conflict with each passing day. The dark side clouds much, but I sense a design behind these seeming coincidences. Anakin, now a young man of 19 but still eager to learn from his master, absorbs these insights with the critical thinking skills Qui-Gon has spent years developing. His natural talent for strategy and tactics flourishes under his master's guidance, but always tempered by questions of ethics and long-term consequences. The war has brought suffering to so many worlds, Master. I've seen the refugee camps, the destroyed cities, the families torn apart by the fighting. If there is someone orchestrating this conflict, they must be stopped. But how do we fight an enemy we can't see? How do we serve peace when we're being asked to wage war? These conversations become a regular part of their wartime service. Lengthy discussions that help Anakin develop the wisdom to see beyond immediate tactical concerns to the broader implications of their actions. Qui-Gon's influence helps shape not just a skilled warrior, but a thoughtful leader who will be essential to the galaxy's future. Their first major engagement comes at the Battle of Christophsis, where they work alongside Obi-Wan's forces to break the separatist blockade. The crystalline world has been under siege for months, its people suffering from shortages of food, medical supplies, and other necessities while droid armies hold the planet hostage. But where Obi-Wan leads with military precision, following the tactical doctrines developed by the Republic's military advisors, Qui-Gon and Anakin employ more creative approaches. They infiltrate the droid command ship not through brute force, but by exploiting weaknesses that Qui-Gon's understanding of the living force helps them perceive. The droids rely on centralized control. Anakin, feel through the force. Sense the flow of information that coordinates their movements. If we can disrupt that flow at its source, we can turn their own organization against them without unnecessary bloodshed. Following his master's guidance, Anakin uses the Force in ways he never would have learned under traditional training. Instead of simply enhancing his physical abilities or predicting enemy movements, he learns to touch the electronic systems themselves. His technical background proves invaluable as he creates feedback loops that cascade through the droid network, causing confusion and system failures that neutralize entire battalions without destroying them. The battle is won with minimal casualties, a stark contrast to the grinding conflicts that characterize so much of the Clone Wars. Republic forces secure the planet, while separatist droids retreat or shut down, their command structure too damaged to continue effective resistance. But more importantly, the civilian population is spared the devastation that would have resulted from a more conventional assault. Anakin's innovative use of the Force draws attention from throughout the Jedi Order. Some masters praise his creativity and effectiveness, while others worry about the precedent of using Force abilities to manipulate technology. But Qui-Gon defends his apprentice's methods, arguing that the Force flows through all things, including the machines that have become so central to galactic civilization. The criticism doesn't bother Anakin as much as it might have in other circumstances. His training under Qui-Gon has taught him to trust his own judgment while remaining open to other perspectives. He understands that not everyone will agree with his methods, but he also knows that his approach serves the greater good of protecting innocent lives. When Ahsoka Tano is assigned as Anakin's Padawan, the development initially surprises everyone involved. At 17, Anakin is younger than most Jedi who take apprentices, and his own training is far from complete. But the Council's decision reflects their growing confidence in both his abilities and Qui-Gon's unconventional teaching methods. The young Togrutta's arrival creates an unusual training dynamic, a Padawan being taught by someone who is himself still learning from a master. But Qui-Gon welcomes Ahsoka into their unconventional training circle, seeing her assignment as an opportunity to further develop Anakin's understanding of responsibility and leadership. Ahsoka's initial confusion with their methods quickly gives way to enthusiasm as she experiences the freedom and flexibility of Qui-Gon's approach. Her natural independence and questioning nature fit well with their philosophy of critical thinking and adaptive problem-solving. Master Qui-Gon, the other Jedi say, you don't follow the code properly, that you're too willing to bend rules when it suits your purposes. Ahsoka's question comes during one of their informal training sessions in the temple gardens, her voice carrying more curiosity than criticism. Qui-Gon chuckles, his eyes twinkling with the amusement of someone who has heard such accusations many times before. The code is a guide, young Ahsoka, not a chain that binds us to inflexibility. It was written by Jedi who faced different challenges than ours, living in times when the galaxy's needs were different from what we face today. If we follow it so rigidly, that we cannot respond to new situations with wisdom and compassion. We become servants to words rather than servants of the Force. This philosophy shapes every aspect of their service during the war. When they encounter civilians caught in the crossfire between Republic and Separatist forces, they don't simply extract them to refugee camps and move on to their next military objective. They stay to help rebuild, to heal the wounds that war has torn in the fabric of communities, to address the underlying problems that made these worlds vulnerable to conflict in the first place. Anakin learns that a Jedi's duty extends far beyond military victory. The skills he develops in these humanitarian missions, engineering expertise, diplomatic wisdom, healing abilities, prove as valuable as any lightsaber technique. More importantly, he begins to understand how individual actions can have far-reaching consequences. How helping one family rebuild their farm might prevent an entire region from falling into despair and extremism. But it's their investigation into the war's origins that truly sets them apart from their peers in the Jedi Order. While other Jedi focus on winning battles and achieving tactical objectives, Qui-Gon, Anakin, and Ahsoka begin to trace the financial and political threads that bind the conflict together. Their unique position, operating with considerable autonomy while maintaining contacts throughout the Republic, gives them access to information that might otherwise remain hidden. The pattern they uncover is disturbing in its implications. The same corporations that supply armor and weapons to the Republic's clone armies also manufacture components for Separatist battle droids. Banking clans that fund Republic military operations also provide loans to Separatist worlds. Trade routes that are supposedly cut off by the war continue to function through complex networks of subsidiaries and shell companies. Master, look at these shipping records that Ahsoka found in the planetary archives on Ryloth. Anakin's voice carries a mixture of anger and disbelief as he displays the evidence on a portable holographic projector. The same company that supplies armor plating to our clone troopers also manufactures droid chassis for the Separatists. How is that possible unless someone wants both sides to be well-equipped for a long, profitable war? Qui-Gon studies the data his apprentices have uncovered, his expression growing grave as the implications become clear. Because someone benefits from both sides being strong enough to fight each other but not strong enough to win quickly. Someone who wants this war to continue, to drain both sides of strength and resources while consolidating power in their own hands. Their investigation leads them inevitably toward Coruscant's highest levels of power, to the Senate chambers where emergency powers accumulate in the hands of fewer and fewer individuals. They begin to notice how Chancellor Palpatine's authority keeps expanding with each crisis, how each Separatist victory seems to justify further centralization of Republican government. But Qui-Gon is too wise to make accusations without ironclad proof, and too careful to reveal their suspicions before they're ready to act on them. Instead, they begin building a network of allies within the Republic clone commanders whose chips have begun to malfunction. Senators who maintain their independence despite pressure to conform, journalists who continue to investigate despite official discouragement. The work is slow and dangerous, requiring them to operate in the shadows while maintaining their public roles as Jedi serving the Republic. Each investigation requires careful planning and flawless execution. They develop code words and encrypted communications, establish safe houses on neutral worlds, and create elaborate cover stories to explain their frequent absences from official duties. One of their most crucial discoveries comes during a mission to the banking world of Scipio. Ostensibly there to negotiate the release of Republic prisoners held by Separatist forces, They use the opportunity to infiltrate the intergalactic banking clan's central archives. Anakin's technical skills prove invaluable as he slices into secure databases, while Ahsoka maintains watch and Qui-Gon uses Force techniques to avoid detection. What they find in those archives exceeds their worst fears. Financial records stretching back decades show a pattern of manipulation that reaches into every major galactic conflict of the past century. The same shadowy figures who profit from the current Clone Wars also benefited from the Stark Hyperspace War, the Naboo Crisis, and dozens of smaller conflicts that have shaped galactic politics. Master, look at this transaction record. Ahsoka's voice carries a mixture of fascination and horror as she studies the data flowing across her portable scanner. The same account that's funding separatist droid factories also holds investments in Republic military contractors. Whoever controls this account is literally profiting from both sides killing each other. But it's not just the financial connections that disturb them. Buried within the banking records are communication logs that reveal coordination between supposedly independent events, separatist attacks that coincidentally create opportunities for Republic military advancement, Republic victories that mysteriously leave valuable separatist resources intact for later capture, trade route disruptions that benefit specific corporations with connections to Coruscant's political elite. The pattern becomes clear as they compile more evidence the Clone Wars are being fought. According to a script written by someone with access to the highest levels of both Republic and Separatist leadership, battles are won and lost, not based on military competence or strategic necessity, but according to a predetermined plan designed to maximize suffering while consolidating power in specific hands. Their investigation takes them to the industrial world of Foundry, where massive factories produce military equipment for both sides of the conflict. The world's surface is covered with sprawling manufacturing complexes, their smokestacks darkening the sky, and their automated assembly lines working around the clock to feed the war's endless appetite for destruction. Posing as Republic inspectors conducting routine quality assessments, they gain access to production facilities that should be exclusively dedicated to Republic military contracts. But what they discover defies all official records. The same assembly lines that produce clone trooper armor during day shifts manufacture droid components during night shifts. The workers, mostly aliens from worlds devastated by the war, are kept segregated and prevented from communicating with each other about their assignments. The factory's manager, a nervous Moon named Tekla Minau, initially tries to deflect their questions with bureaucratic double talk. But when Qui-Gon employs subtle Force persuasion techniques, the truth comes pouring out. The dual production schedule has been in place since the war's beginning, mandated by contracts that supersede any Republic military regulations. I don't understand why you're questioning this, honored Jedi. Minau's voice trembles as he leads them through a facility where the night shift is preparing to begin production of battle droid chassis. The authorization comes from the highest levels chancellery clearance codes that cannot be questioned or countermanded. We were told that maintaining industrial capacity for both sides ensures that peace negotiations can be supported by economic incentives when the time comes. Anakin exchanges glances with his master and former Padawan, recognizing the sophisticated nature of the deception they're uncovering. The conspiracy doesn't just manipulate events, it creates elaborate justifications that make even willing participants believe they're serving noble purposes. Their investigation on Foundry nearly ends in disaster, when separatist forces launch what appears to be a coordinated attack on the planet's industrial facilities. Droid armies pour from hidden staging areas, their assault timed perfectly to coincide with the Jedi team's presence on the world. But as the battle unfolds, disturbing patterns emerge that suggest the attack is not what it appears to be. The droid forces target specific facilities while avoiding others. Their assault pattern designed to destroy evidence rather than capture strategic resources. Factories that produce exclusively for the Republic are bombed into rubble, while those with dual production schedules are left mysteriously untouched. Most tellingly, the Separatist forces withdraw just as Republic reinforcements arrive, abandoning positions they could easily have held. The battle's aftermath provides additional evidence of the conspiracy's reach. Republic investigators who arrive to assess the damage focus their attention on areas where the Jedi team had been conducting their covert investigation. Key witnesses disappear into Republic protective custody and are never seen again. Critical computer systems suffer convenient malfunctions that erase precisely the data the Jedi had been examining. We're not just investigating a conspiracy anymore, Qui-Gon observes as they review the destruction from the safety of their hidden ship. We're in active conflict with it. Someone knows what we're doing and is taking steps to stop us. That means we're getting close to something they can't afford to have exposed. The realization adds new urgency to their mission while highlighting the personal danger they face. But it also provides valuable intelligence about their opponent's capabilities and limitations. The conspiracy has vast resources and reaches into the highest levels of both Republic and Separatist leadership. But it's not omnipotent. The fact that they're resorting to crude cover-up operations suggests that the Jedi investigation is threatening something crucial to their plans. Their next major discovery comes during the siege of Ryloth, where Republic forces are attempting to liberate the Twi'lek homeworld from Separatist occupation. The planet has been under droid control for months, its population subjected to harsh exploitation as their resources are strip-mined to fuel the Separatist war machine. Anakin leads a squadron of clone pilots in the initial assault on the Separatist blockade, his natural piloting abilities enhanced by years of training under Qui-Gon's guidance. But as the space battle unfolds, he notices tactical anomalies that suggest the enemy's response has been carefully scripted rather than tactically sound. Separatist ships hold formations that present unnecessary targets to Republic forces. Their defensive positions arranged to create dramatic battles rather than effective resistance. More importantly, certain Separatist vessels seem to be transmitting data to unknown recipients even as they're being destroyed, as if their real purpose is intelligence gathering rather than military defense. The ground campaign reveals even more disturbing evidence. When Republic forces break through Separatist lines and advance toward the planet's major cities, they discover that the droid occupation has been systematically documenting Twi'lek cultural sites, population centers, and resource deposits. But the data isn't being transmitted to Separatist command centers. It's being forwarded to accounts traced to Republic intelligence services. The liberation of Ryloth proceeds according to plan, with minimal casualties and maximum media coverage. But the Jedi team's investigation reveals that the entire campaign has been orchestrated to serve purposes beyond military necessity. The Twi'lek people, grateful for their liberation, agreed to expanded Republic oversight of their world's resources. Mining rights that were supposedly seized by Separatist forces are transferred to Republic-aligned corporations. Cultural artifacts that were rescued from Separatist exploitation disappear into private collections. Senator Orn Free Tar, the Twi'lek representative to the Republic Senate, plays a crucial role in facilitating these arrangements. His cooperation with Republic authorities seems natural given his people's recent liberation. But the Jedi investigation reveals a more complex picture. Banking records show substantial payments to accounts controlled by Tar's family, transfers that began months before the Ryloth campaign commenced. The pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. The Clone Wars are not just a conflict between competing political philosophies, but a vast economic enterprise designed to transfer wealth and resources into the hands of a select few. Worlds that resist exploitation are targeted for liberation campaigns that leave them more vulnerable than before. Populations that might oppose the new order are displaced, scattered, or eliminated entirely. But it's their investigation into the clone army's origins that provides the most chilling evidence of the conspiracy's scope and intentions. Working with clone commanders who have begun to question their own behavioral programming, they gain access to classified files on Kamino that reveal the true purpose of the inhibitor chips implanted in every clone soldier. The chips were supposedly designed to reduce aggressive behavior and ensure loyalty to the Republic. But the technical specifications tell a different story. Each device contains complex programming that can override a clone's free will entirely, forcing absolute obedience to specific command codes. More disturbing still, the chips can be activated remotely, turning the entire clone army into a weapon that can be wielded by whoever controls the activation sequences. Commander Rex, one of the first clones to have his chip removed, describes the experience in terms that chill the Jedi investigators. It was like being a passenger in my own body, watching myself follow orders I knew were wrong, but being unable to stop. The chip doesn't just control actions, it suppresses the ability to question, to feel guilt, to maintain any sense of individual identity. The discovery forces them to confront a terrible possibility. Every clone trooper serving the Republic is a potential sleeper agent, programmed to turn against their Jedi commanders at a moment's notice. The army that has fought so bravely to defend democracy could instantly become the instrument of its destruction, and there would be no way for the intended victims to fight back. Working with sympathetic clone officers, they begin the dangerous process of identifying and removing chips from key personnel. The procedure requires sophisticated medical equipment and careful timing to avoid detection, limiting them to a handful of operations. But each successful removal creates another ally in their growing network of resistance to the conspiracy. The medical procedures also reveal additional layers of programming built into the clone's genetic structure. Beyond the inhibitor chips, the clones carry genetic markers that accelerate aging and create psychological dependencies on external authority. They've been designed not just as soldiers, but as the perfect slave army, intelligent enough to be effective, loyal enough to be trusted, but programmed to be incapable of independent thought or action. Dr. Nala Se, the Kaminoan scientist responsible for much of the clone army's development, initially resists their inquiries with professional detachment. But when Qui-Gon employs advanced force techniques to penetrate her mental defenses, the truth about the project's real sponsors emerges. The orders came from the highest levels of Republic authority, she admits, her elongated features showing unusual emotional distress. But the specifications were provided by someone else, someone who understood human psychology and neurology in ways that exceeded our own expertise. We were told it was necessary for galactic security, that these safeguards would prevent the kind of military coups that had plagued other galactic governments. The investigation into the clone army's creation leads them back to Coruscant and the highest levels of Republic government. The authorization codes for the project trace directly to the Chancellor's office. But the technical specifications came from sources that remain hidden behind layers of bureaucratic misdirection. As they piece together the evidence, a chilling picture emerges of a conspiracy that has been decades in the making. The clone army wasn't created in response to the separatist threat. It was designed long before the current conflict began, waiting for the right crisis to justify its deployment. The inhibitor chips weren't added as an afterthought, they were part of the original design, intended from the beginning to ensure that the clones could be turned against their commanders when the time was right. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery is the realization that the conspiracy's architects have been planning not just for military victory, but for the complete transformation of galactic society. Documents hidden in Kaminoan archives reference social restructuring protocols and population management initiatives that suggest the clone army is intended to serve as an occupation force for the entire galaxy. The scope of the plan is breathtaking in its ambition and terrifying in its implications. Every major institution of galactic civilization, the Senate, the Jedi Order, the banking system, the military, has been infiltrated and compromised. The Clone Wars aren't just a conflict between Republic and Separatist forces. They're the final phase of a campaign to destroy the old order entirely and replace it with something unrecognizably different. Their investigation reaches a critical juncture during the Battle of Coruscant, when Separatist forces launch a massive assault on the Republic capital itself. The attack seems like a desperate gambit by Count Dooku and General Grievous, a final attempt to strike at the heart of Republic power before their inevitable defeat. But the Jedi team's investigation has prepared them to see the battle's true purpose. The Separatist assault targets specific buildings and installations while avoiding others, their attack pattern designed to eliminate evidence and witnesses rather than achieve military objectives. Most significantly, the assault provides perfect cover for the implementation of the final phase of the conspiracy's plan. As the battle rages in the skies above Coruscant, Chancellor Palpatine announces the activation of emergency protocols that grant him unprecedented authority over all Republic military forces. The measure is presented as a temporary necessity to coordinate the capital's defense, but the Jedi team recognizes it as the moment they've been dreading, the signal for Order 66 to be implemented across the galaxy. The activation of the clone army's inhibitor chips occurs simultaneously with Palpatine's emergency declaration, turning Republic forces against their Jedi commanders on hundreds of worlds. But the conspiracy's architects have underestimated the extent of the Jedi investigation and the network of allies they've assembled. Clone commanders who have had their chips removed are prepared for this moment, using their positions to protect Jedi who would otherwise be caught completely off guard. Sympathetic senators activate pre-planned communication networks that spread word of the conspiracy to world that might otherwise accept the official explanation. Journalists and investigators who have been secretly working with the Jedi release carefully prepared evidence that exposes the true nature of the emergency. The battle for the galaxy's future becomes a complex, multi-sided conflict as the conspiracy's carefully laid plans begin to unravel. Clone units, loyal to their original programming, fight against those who have been freed from it. Republic senators who have been bought or coerced clash with those who maintain their integrity. Separatist forces, suddenly leaderless as their secret Republic controllers are exposed, fragment into competing factions. But the most crucial confrontation takes place in the Chancellor's office, where Anakin and Qui-Gon finally face the architect of the galaxy's suffering. Palpatine's transformation from kindly grandfather figure to Sith Lord is shocking in its completeness. His mask of benevolence discarded to reveal the hatred and ambition that have driven his decades-long campaign for power. You have been most impressive, young Skywalker. Palpatine's voice carries none of its former warmth as he stands behind his desk, no longer bothering to conceal the dark side energy that radiates from his presence. Your investigation has uncovered more than I expected any Jedi capable of discovering, but you have also played directly into my hands, eliminating my less useful allies while demonstrating your own potential as my apprentice. The revelation that their investigation has been anticipated and manipulated adds another layer of complexity to the confrontation. Palpatine has been aware of their activities from the beginning, allowing them to proceed because their discoveries served his purposes in different ways. Corrupt senators and officials who were exposed by the Jedi investigation were already marked for elimination, their removal clearing the way for more loyal servants. But the Sith Lord has miscalculated the extent of Anakin's growth under Qui-Gon's guidance. The young man who faces him is not the confused and angry youth who might have been turned to the dark side, but a mature Jedi who understands both his own potential for darkness and the support systems that keep him anchored to the light. Your offer holds no appeal for me, Chancellor. Anakin's voice is steady despite the magnitude of the moment, his hand resting calmly on his lightsaber hilt. I've seen what your vision of order looks like: fear, suffering, and death imposed on those too weak to resist. That's not the future I want for the galaxy, and it's not the future I'll help you create. The confrontation that follows is unlike anything in the traditional timeline. Instead of a simple lightsaber duel between Sith and Jedi, it becomes a complex battle involving multiple participants and overlapping conflicts. Clone troopers loyal to different programming clash in the corridors outside Palpatine's office. Senate guards who have remained loyal to the Republic fight against those who have been secretly serving the conspiracy. Separatist droids, their command structure shattered by revelations about their true controllers, operate according to contradictory programming. Palpatine's powers as a Sith Lord are formidable, enhanced by decades of careful preparation and the accumulated dark side energy of the galaxy's suffering. His Force lightning tears through the air with devastating power, while his lightsaber moves with speed and precision that challenge even Qui-Gon's considerable abilities. But the Sith Lord faces not just two skilled opponents, but the combined will of all those who have chosen to resist his vision of the future. Clone troopers who have reclaimed their free will fight alongside Jedi who understand the true nature of their enemy. Senators who have maintained their integrity work with journalists who refuse to be silenced. Even former separatist leaders, horrified by the extent to which they've been manipulated, join the growing resistance to Palpatine's rule. The battle's turning point comes when Ahsoka arrives with reinforcements, clone units from across the galaxy who have been freed from their programming and have come to defend the Republic they truly believe in. But more importantly, she brings evidence that definitively proves Palpatine's role in orchestrating the war and manipulating both sides for his own benefit. The proof is overwhelming. Communication intercepts showing Palpatine's coordination with separatist leaders, financial records demonstrating his control over both Republic and separatist resources, testimony from witnesses who have seen him wielding Sith powers. When this evidence is broadcast simultaneously across the galaxy, it shatters any remaining support for his regime. Palpatine's response is to abandon all pretense and reveal the full extent of his power. Dark side energy pours from him in waves, turning the Chancellor's office into a storm of malevolent force that threatens to consume everyone present. But the light side users who oppose him are no longer fighting alone. They're supported by the will of billions of beings across the galaxy who have chosen freedom over tyranny. The final moment comes when Anakin, drawing on everything Qui-Gon has taught him about love, compassion, and sacrifice, channels not just his own power, but the combined strength of all those he cares about. Padmé's love, Ahsoka's loyalty, Qui-Gon's wisdom, even his mother's memory, all of it flows through him as he strikes the blow that ends Palpatine's reign of terror. The Sith Lord's death triggers the collapse of his entire conspiracy. Without his coordinating influence, the vast network of corruption and manipulation that has controlled galactic politics for decades begins to unravel. Clone armies across the galaxy stand down as their programming is overridden by commanders who have reclaimed their free will. Separatist forces surrender as their leaders realize the extent to which they've been deceived and manipulated. But the end of the war is only the beginning of the reconstruction that must follow. The galaxy has been devastated by years of orchestrated conflict, its institutions corrupted, and its people scattered by forced migrations and economic manipulation. The task of rebuilding will require not just military victory, but the patient work of healing societies that have been torn apart by carefully manufactured hatred and division. Anakin finds himself at the center of these reconstruction efforts. His unique position as both a war hero and a symbol of redemption, making him invaluable in bridging the gap between former enemies. His marriage to Padmé, now revealed and accepted by a reformed Jedi Order, becomes a powerful symbol of how love can overcome division and hatred. The birth of Luke and Leia occurs in a galaxy finally at peace. Their first cries heard not in the shadow of tyranny, but in the light of hope for the future. Anakin holds his children with wonder and joy, surrounded by friends and allies who have fought alongside him to create a better world. Qui-Gon, now showing his age but still vibrant with the wisdom of years, watches his former apprentice with deep satisfaction. The boy he found on Tatooine has become the man the galaxy needed, not through conquest or domination, but through understanding, compassion, and the courage to do what is right, even when the cost is high. The Jedi Order that emerges from the war's ashes is fundamentally different from its predecessor. Guided by the lessons learned during the conflict, it embraces flexibility over rigid doctrine, understanding over blind obedience, and emotional balance over suppression. The new generation of Jedi understands that the Force flows through all aspects of life, including love, family, and the connections that bind communities together. Anakin's role as a teacher becomes crucial to this transformation. His own journey from slavery to Jedi Knight to husband and father provides a model for how the Force can guide beings toward their highest potential without requiring them to abandon their humanity. His classes at the rebuilt Jedi Temple are unlike any in the Order's history, emphasizing practical wisdom and emotional intelligence alongside traditional lightsaber techniques and Force abilities. The political reconstruction of the galaxy proves equally challenging and rewarding. The revelation of how extensively the Republic's institutions were corrupted by Sith influence leads to comprehensive reforms that strengthen democratic processes while preventing future manipulation. The Senate is restructured to ensure better representation for Outer Rim worlds, while new oversight mechanisms prevent the concentration of power that made Palpatine's rise possible. Padmé plays a crucial role in these political reforms. Her experience as a senator and her understanding of how tyranny can emerge from seemingly legitimate authority, making her insights invaluable. Her work focuses particularly on ensuring that the mistakes of the past cannot be repeated, that future generations will be protected by institutional safeguards rather than depending solely on the heroism of individuals. The clone troopers face perhaps the most complex challenge of reconstruction. Freed from their programming, but still bearing the genetic modifications that shaped their creation, they must decide what kind of lives they want to build for themselves. Some choose to remain in military service, but as volunteers rather than conscripts. Others pursue civilian careers, their accelerated education and enhanced abilities making them valuable contributors to reconstruction efforts. Rex becomes a symbol of clone liberation, working tirelessly to ensure that his brothers receive the support and recognition they deserve. His friendship with Anakin, forged in the crucible of war but deepened by their shared commitment to justice, helps bridge the gap between clone and natural-born citizens as they work together to build a better future. The reconstruction extends beyond politics and institutions to encompass the cultural and spiritual healing that the galaxy requires. Worlds that were devastated by the war need not just physical rebuilding, but psychological recovery from the trauma of manipulation and conflict. The Jedi take on an expanded role as healers and counselors, helping communities process their experiences and find ways to move forward. Ahsoka, now a master in her own right, specializes in this aspect of reconstruction. Her own experience of being falsely accused and cast out by the Jedi Order gives her unique insight into the process of rebuilding trust after betrayal. Her work with communities affected by the war becomes a model for how healing can occur even after the deepest wounds. The discovery and liberation of other Force-sensitive individuals who were hidden or suppressed during Palpatine's rule leads to a renaissance in understanding of the Force's diverse manifestations. The new Jedi Order actively seeks out these individuals, not to recruit them necessarily, but to learn from their different perspectives and ensure that no one is forced to hide their abilities out of fear. This expansion of understanding leads to the development of new techniques and philosophies that enrich the Jedi tradition while remaining true to its core principles. Anakin's mechanical aptitude, once viewed with suspicion by traditional Jedi, becomes the foundation for entire new schools of Force application that integrate technology and organic ability in harmonious ways. The long-term consequences of these changes ripple outward through generations. Luke and Leia grow up in a galaxy where diversity of thought and approach is celebrated rather than suppressed, where questions are encouraged rather than forbidden, where love is seen as a strength rather than a weakness. Their own training as Force users reflects these new approaches, emphasizing balance and understanding over rigid adherence to dogma. The twins' different personalities and interests lead them down complementary paths that serve the galaxy's ongoing needs. Luke gravitates toward the more traditional aspects of Jedi training while incorporating the innovations his father has pioneered. Leia combines Force sensitivity with political acumen, eventually becoming a senator like her mother, while using her abilities to serve diplomatic and humanitarian causes. The final confrontation with Palpatine unfolds across multiple locations simultaneously, as the conspiracy's web of control begins to collapse under the weight of exposed truth. In the Senate chambers, Loyalist senators led by Padme present irrefutable evidence of the Chancellor's manipulation to an emergency session broadcast across the galaxy. The holo recordings show Palpatine coordinating with separatist leaders, authorizing war crimes, and discussing the elimination of the Jedi Order with casual indifference. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Jedi Temple, Ahsoka leads a team of clone commanders in the delicate process of removing inhibitor chips from an entire battalion of Republic forces. The medical procedures are conducted in secret, using equipment smuggled in from sympathetic sources and techniques developed through months of careful experimentation. Each successful removal creates another ally, another voice that can testify to the true nature of the clone army's programming. Commander Cody, one of the highest-ranking clones to undergo the procedure, describes the experience with haunting clarity. It was like waking up from a nightmare I didn't know I was having. For years, I thought my absolute loyalty to orders was just good military discipline. I never questioned why certain missions felt wrong, why some of my actions seemed to contradict everything I believed about protecting the innocent. Now I understand the chip wasn't just controlling my actions. It was suppressing my ability to think critically about those actions. The revelation spreads quickly through the clone ranks as word of the chip removal process reaches units across the galaxy. Some commanders attempt to suppress the information, their own programming still intact and driving them to maintain the conspiracy's control. But others, particularly those who have developed close relationships with their Jedi generals, begin to question the source of their unquestioning obedience. Captain Rex becomes a crucial figure in this awakening, using his reputation and connections to reach clone units that might otherwise remain under the chip's influence. His personal testimony about the difference between programmed loyalty and genuine choice resonates powerfully with soldiers who have begun to feel stirrings of doubt about their conditioning. I served alongside General Skywalker for years. Rex explains to a gathering of clone officers on the Venator-class destroyer, Resolute. I thought my willingness to follow his orders without question was evidence of my dedication to the Republic. But after having my chip removed, I realized there's a difference between choosing to trust someone and being programmed to obey them. The first makes you a soldier. The second makes you a slave. The psychological impact of these revelations extends far beyond the clone army itself. Across the galaxy, beings who have supported the Republic's war effort begin to question the foundation of everything they believed about the conflict. Families who lost loved ones in battles that were secretly orchestrated for profit demand accountability. Worlds that sacrifice their resources for the greater good discover that their contributions primarily enriched a small group of conspirators. On Alderaan, Queen Breha Organa convenes an emergency session of the Planetary Council to address the revelations about the war's true nature. The proceedings are broadcast across the core worlds, providing a model for how democratic institutions can respond to systematic deception. The Queen's measured but firm denunciation of the conspiracy helps rally support for the growing resistance movement. We have been deceived on a scale that challenges our understanding of how galactic politics function, she declares to the assembled representatives. But the appropriate response to deception is not despair. It is determination to ensure that such manipulation can never again subvert the democratic values we hold dear. Alderaan will support any legitimate effort to remove those responsible for this betrayal from positions of power. The economic dimensions of the conspiracy's collapse prove almost as devastating as the political ones. Financial markets across the galaxy experience massive disruptions as the true ownership of major corporations is revealed. Companies that appeared to be fierce competitors are shown to be subsidiaries of the same shadowy conglomerates. Banking institutions that claimed neutrality in the conflict are exposed as active participants in money laundering operations that funded both sides. The intergalactic banking clan faces particular scrutiny as investigators trace the funding sources for both Republic and Separatist military operations. Chairman San Hill, confronted with evidence of his organization's role in perpetuating the conflict, attempts to deflect responsibility by claiming ignorance of the broader conspiracy. But financial records tell a different story, showing deliberate coordination designed to maximize profit from galactic suffering. We simply provided standard banking services to legitimate clients. Hill protests during emergency hearings conducted by a coalition of planetary governments. If some of those clients were engaged in activities we were not informed about, that does not make the banking clan complicit in their actions. We operated according to established protocols and galactic banking regulations, but Anakin's investigation has uncovered evidence that demolishes these claims. Working with financial experts from multiple worlds, they've traced a complex web of shell companies and dummy corporations that allowed the banking clan to coordinate funding for both sides while maintaining plausible deniability. The evidence shows not just awareness of the conflict's artificial nature, but active participation in designing financial structures that would maximize its duration and intensity. Master Skywalker. Hill's nervous assistant whispers during a break in the proceedings. Perhaps we could reach some accommodation? The banking clan has resources that could be valuable in reconstruction efforts. Surely the galaxy would benefit more from cooperation than from punishment. Anakin's response reflects the wisdom he's gained through years of training under Qui-Gon's guidance. Justice isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about ensuring that those who have caused suffering take responsibility for their actions and work to repair the damage they've done. If the banking clan wants to demonstrate genuine commitment to galactic welfare, they can start by providing full disclosure of their operations and accepting oversight to prevent future manipulation. The revelation of the conspiracy's scope forces a complete re-evaluation of recent galactic history. Events that seemed like natural political developments are exposed as carefully orchestrated manipulations. The Naboo crisis, which launched Palpatine's political career, is revealed to have been engineered through corruption of Trade Federation leadership. The creation of the separatist movement is shown to have been guided by agents working for Republic interests. Even seemingly random pirate attacks and natural disasters were often exploited or artificially created to serve the conspiracy's agenda. Count Dooku's role in these events proves particularly complex. As more evidence emerges, it becomes clear that the former Jedi was both a willing participant in the conspiracy and, ultimately, another of its victims. His genuine grievances against the Republic's corruption were exploited and amplified by Sith manipulation, turning his legitimate concerns into weapons against the very institutions he originally sought to reform. Dooku's final message, recorded before his death and hidden in encrypted files discovered on Sereno, provides haunting insight into the Sith Lord's mindset. I believed I was serving a greater purpose, working to create a galaxy free from the corruption and complacency that had infected the Republic. But I see now that I was merely another tool, another weapon wielded by forces even darker than those I sought to oppose. May those who come after learn from my failure and find ways to create change without embracing the very evil they claim to fight. The discovery of this message leads to broader discussions about the nature of corruption and the dangers of believing that noble ends justify ignoble means. Anakin, drawing on his own experience of being tempted by shortcuts to power, becomes a voice for understanding how good intentions can be corrupted by exposure to dark influences. The dark side doesn't typically corrupt people by making them want to do evil. He explains to a gathering of former separatist leaders who are struggling to understand their own roles in the conspiracy. It corrupts them by convincing them that they can use evil methods to achieve good results. Count Dooku genuinely wanted to create a better galaxy, but he was willing to accept civilian casualties, authoritarian methods, and alliance with Sith Lords as necessary evils. Each compromise made the next one easier until he lost sight of his original purpose entirely. These discussions become central to the truth and reconciliation process that emerges as the galaxy attempts to heal from years of artificial conflict. Rather than simply punishing those who were deceived or coerced into supporting the conspiracy, the focus shifts toward understanding how such massive manipulation was possible and creating safeguards to prevent its recurrence. The process is neither quick nor easy. Many beings struggle to accept that their cherished beliefs about the war were based on lies. Veterans who fought bravely for causes they believed were just experienced profound disillusionment when they learned that their sacrifices primarily served to enrich arms dealers and consolidate political power. Families who lost loved ones in the conflict faced the devastating realization that those deaths were not heroic necessities, but tragic consequences of artificial manipulation. But the truth and reconciliation process also reveals the remarkable resilience of galactic civilization. Communities that were torn apart by artificial divisions find ways to rebuild connections across former battle lines. Clone soldiers and separatist militias discover that they share more common ground than the propaganda claimed. Worlds that were portrayed as irreconcilable enemies begin to explore opportunities for cooperation and mutual support. The role of the Jedi Order in this healing process proves crucial but requires significant adaptation. The traditional Jedi approach of emotional detachment and political neutrality is inadequate for addressing the deep psychological wounds left by systematic deception. Instead, the Reformed Order embraces a more engaged approach that acknowledges the importance of emotional processing and community connection in healing trauma. Anakin's leadership in developing these new approaches draws heavily on his own experience of overcoming darkness through connection rather than isolation. His marriage to Padmé, once seen as a violation of Jedi principles, becomes a model for how emotional bonds can strengthen rather than weaken a Force user's connection to the light side. Love isn't the opposite of Jedi wisdom. He explains to a gathering of young Force sensitives during one of the new training programs. It's one of the most powerful expressions of it. The Force flows through all living beings, connecting us in ways that transcend individual consciousness. When we love someone genuinely without possessiveness or fear of loss, we're aligning ourselves with that fundamental connection. The dark side tries to convince us that caring for others makes us vulnerable. But the truth is that genuine love makes us stronger. This philosophy influences every aspect of the reconstructed Jedi training programs. Students are encouraged to maintain connections with their families and communities, rather than severing them. Emotional expression is seen as healthy rather than dangerous, with training focused on understanding and channeling emotions constructively, rather than suppressing them entirely. The traditional Jedi trials are supplemented with new challenges that test candidates' ability to maintain their principles under complex social and political pressures. Rather than facing artificial tests in controlled environments, prospective Jedi work on real reconstruction projects, where their decisions have genuine consequences for suffering beings. Ahsoka's development of these training innovations reflects her own journey from traditional Padawan to independent Force user to master teacher. Her experience of being falsely accused and abandoned by the order she served provides unique insight into the importance of maintaining individual moral compass even when institutional authority fails. "We're not training people to be perfect," she explains to other Jedi instructors. "We're training them to be thoughtful, to question, to consider multiple perspectives, to take responsibility for the consequences of their actions." The old way assumed that following rules would automatically lead to good outcomes. But we've seen how rules can be manipulated by those with hidden agendas. The new way emphasizes developing judgment that can navigate complex situations even when clear guidance isn't available. The political reconstruction of the galaxy proves equally challenging and revolutionary. The revelation that Republic institutions were so thoroughly compromised forces a complete reconsideration of how democratic governance can be protected from internal subversion. The new constitutional framework that emerges incorporates multiple safeguards designed to prevent the concentration of power that enabled Palpatine's rise. Emergency powers are strictly limited in scope and duration, with automatic expiration clauses that require broad consensus to extend. Military command structures are decentralized to prevent any single individual from controlling large portions of the armed forces. Financial oversight mechanisms make it virtually impossible to hide the kind of massive money laundering operations that funded the artificial war. But perhaps, most importantly, the new system emphasizes transparency and public engagement in ways the old Republic never achieved. Regular citizens are given unprecedented access to government deliberations, with advanced communication technologies allowing direct participation in democratic processes across vast distances. Padmé's role in designing these reforms draws on her extensive experience with both executive and legislative governance. Her years as Queen of Naboo and Senator in the Republic Senate have given her unique insight into how democratic institutions can be both empowered and protected from corruption. Democracy isn't a destination. It's a process that requires constant vigilance and participation. She explains during the Constitutional Convention that establishes the new galactic government. The moment we assume that our institutions will automatically protect our freedoms, we become vulnerable to those who would exploit our complacency. Every generation must actively choose democracy anew, must engage with the difficult work of self-governance, rather than delegating it entirely to professional politicians. The economic reconstruction proves particularly complex, as the revelation of widespread corruption has undermined trust in many of the galaxy's largest institutions. Rather than simply replacing corrupt leadership, the new economic framework emphasizes transparency, worker participation, and community ownership that makes large-scale manipulation more difficult. Worker cooperatives become increasingly common as beings seek alternatives to corporate structures that proved so vulnerable to conspiracy influence. Planetary governments establish sovereign wealth funds that ensure resource extraction benefits local populations rather than distant shareholders. Banking regulations require unprecedented disclosure of funding sources and investment destinations. The transition isn't without difficulties. Some worlds that profited heavily from the artificial conflict experience economic disruption as unsustainable war industries are converted to peaceful purposes. Unemployment spikes in regions dependent on military production until retraining programs can prepare workers for new roles in reconstruction efforts. But the economic changes also create opportunities that wouldn't have existed under the conspiracy-controlled system. Worlds that were deliberately kept impoverished to maintain labor discipline gain access to education and technology that enables rapid development. Trade routes that were artificially restricted for political purposes are opened, allowing natural economic relationships to develop. The Outer Rim experiences particular benefits from these changes. Worlds like Tatooine, long ignored by core world governments, except as sources of cheap labor and raw materials, become partners in galactic commerce rather than mere extraction sites. Anakin's own background gives him special insight into the potential of these regions when they're freed from artificial constraints. I remember what it felt like to believe that nothing would ever change, that slavery was just the natural order of things. He reflects during a reconstruction mission to his homeworld. But change is always possible when people are willing to work together and support each other. Tatooine doesn't have to be a backwater forever. It has resources, including human resources, that can contribute enormously to galactic civilization when they're properly supported and valued. The liberation of Tatooine slaves becomes a symbol of the broader transformation occurring across the galaxy. Rather than simply declaring slavery illegal and hoping for compliance, the new government provides comprehensive support for both former slaves and their former owners to develop new economic relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Former slaves receive education, healthcare, and startup resources that enable them to become full participants in galactic commerce. Former slave owners who cooperate with the transition process receive assistance in converting their operations to paid labor models, while those who resist face serious legal consequences. Skywalker, now freed not just from individual bondage but from the entire system that enabled her exploitation, becomes a leader in these transformation efforts. Her natural wisdom and deep understanding of how oppressive systems affect their victims makes her invaluable in designing support programs that address both practical and psychological needs. My son learned to believe in the possibility of freedom even when everything around him suggested it was impossible, she says during a gathering of former slaves from across the Outer Rim. That belief sustained him through his journey from slavery to the Jedi Order. And now, it's our responsibility to help others develop that same belief in their own potential for transformation. The cultural reconstruction that accompanies these political and economic changes proves equally important in creating lasting stability. The conspiracy's manipulation extended far beyond military and financial control to encompass entertainment, education, and religious institutions that shaped how beings understood themselves and their relationships with others. Propaganda networks that promoted artificial divisions between different species, cultures, and political philosophies are replaced with communication systems that emphasize shared values and common interests. Educational curricula that glorified violence and competition are redesigned to promote critical thinking and collaborative problem-solving. But perhaps most importantly, the new cultural framework celebrates diversity rather than treating it as a source of conflict. The conspiracy succeeded in part by convincing different groups that their interests were incompatible, that prosperity for one meant deprivation for others. The reconstruction process emphasizes how cultural differences can be sources of strength rather than division. The establishment of new cultural exchange programs allows beings from different worlds to learn directly from each other, rather than relying on stereotypes and propaganda. Artists, scholars, and spiritual leaders collaborate on projects that explore universal themes while respecting particular traditions. These cultural changes prove essential in preventing the kind of resentment and extremism that might otherwise emerge from the post-war chaos. Rather than simply defeating the conspiracy militarily, the galaxy addresses the underlying conditions that made such manipulation possible in the first place. The role of the Force in this broader reconstruction becomes a subject of renewed interest and investigation. The revelation that Sith influence extended so far into galactic civilization raises important questions about the relationship between Force-sensitive individuals and democratic governance. Some voices call for complete separation between Force users and political power, arguing that beings with such abilities pose inherent risks to democratic equality. But others, including many who witnessed the crucial role Jedi played in exposing and defeating the conspiracy, argue for integration rather than isolation. The solution that emerges reflects the new approach to balance that Qui-Gon's philosophy has inspired. Force-sensitive individuals are neither excluded from public life nor granted special authority based on their abilities. Instead, they are expected to use their gifts in service of the common good, while remaining accountable to democratic oversight. Anakin's own role exemplifies this approach. His Force abilities make him uniquely qualified for certain types of reconstruction work, mediating disputes, detecting deception, coordinating complex relief efforts. But his authority in these roles derives from democratic mandate rather than mystical power, and his decisions are subject to review by elected bodies. The Force flows through all beings, but that doesn't mean all beings are called to the same type of service, he explains to a group of newly discovered Force sensitives who are struggling to understand their place in the post-war galaxy. Some of us are meant to be teachers, others healers, others builders or protectors or artists. The important thing is finding how your particular gifts can best serve others, not assuming that having abilities automatically makes you qualified to lead. This philosophy shapes the expansion of Force training beyond the traditional Jedi Order. Rather than maintaining a monopoly on Force education, the reconstructed Order actively seeks out other traditions and approaches that can contribute to a more complete understanding of these abilities. Ancient traditions that were suppressed during the Republic's decline are rediscovered and studied. Force-sensitive beings who develop their abilities outside formal training receive recognition and support rather than forced conversion to Jedi methods. The diversity of approaches enriches everyone's understanding while preventing any single group from accumulating too much influence. The long-term effects of these changes become apparent as Luke and Leia reach adulthood in a galaxy transformed by their parents' struggles. Growing up with knowledge of both the old way and the new, they represent the first generation to fully embody the integrated approach to Force training that has emerged from the reconstruction. Luke's natural inclination toward traditional Jedi methods is enriched by exposure to multiple perspectives and approaches. His training emphasizes not just personal mastery, but community service, not just individual enlightenment, but collective welfare. He develops a deep understanding of how Force abilities can be used to support democratic institutions rather than replacing them. Leia's path combines Force sensitivity with political leadership in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. Her training teaches her to use her abilities to enhance her service as an elected representative rather than as a substitute for democratic accountability. She becomes a model for how Force users can participate fully in public life while respecting the principles of democratic equality. The twins' different approaches reflect the broader diversity that has become central to the new understanding of Force training. Rather than enforcing conformity to a single model, the reconstructed Order celebrates how different personalities and inclinations can find unique ways to serve the common good. Their childhood experiences provide insight into how the next generation is processing the galaxy's transformation. Growing up with clone veterans as family friends, former separatist leaders as political allies, and reformed institutions as normal background, they take for granted things that required enormous struggle for their parents' generation to achieve. But they also understand the fragility of the peace they've inherited. Their education includes detailed study of how the conspiracy was able to manipulate galactic civilization so thoroughly, ensuring that they're prepared to recognize and resist similar threats in the future. The story of how our galaxy nearly fell to tyranny isn't ancient history. Anakin tells them during one of their family discussions about recent events. It happened during our lifetimes, and it succeeded because good people made small compromises that seemed reasonable at the time. Each generation has to actively choose freedom, has to remain vigilant against those who would trade liberty for the promise of security or order. As the twins mature and begin taking on greater responsibilities, they represent hope that the lessons learned through such painful experience won't be forgotten. Their generation will face new challenges that require wisdom, courage, and the ability to learn from past mistakes while adapting to changing circumstances. The galaxy that emerges from this extended period of reconstruction is not perfect. No society ever is. But it is fundamentally healthier and more resilient than what came before. The institutions that govern it are designed to prevent the concentration of power that enabled Palpatine's rise. The cultural values that guide it emphasize cooperation and understanding over domination and fear. The spiritual traditions that support it embrace the full spectrum of Force expression, rather than limiting it to narrow orthodoxies. More importantly, the beings who inhabit this reconstructed galaxy understand their responsibility to maintain what has been built. The conspiracy succeeded in part because too many people assumed that democracy and freedom would preserve themselves automatically. The new civilization is built on the understanding that every individual has a role to play in protecting the values they share. Anakin, now middle-aged and bearing the wisdom of hard-won experience, looks back on his journey with a mixture of gratitude and determination. The path from slave boy to Jedi Master to husband and father has been filled with challenges and choices, but each step has been guided by the understanding Qui-Gon helped him develop, that the Force flows through all things, connecting all beings in a web of mutual responsibility and care. Standing in the rebuilt Jedi Temple with his family around him and his former Padawan now teaching her own students, Anakin reflects on how different this reality is from the dark future that might have been. The choices made, the support given and received, the willingness to question and grow and change, all of it has contributed to a galaxy where hope triumphs over fear, where love conquers hatred, where the light side of the Force flows freely through billions of lives. But he also knows that vigilance remains essential. The dark side still exists, still whispers its temptations to those who feel powerless or afraid. New challenges will arise that test the resolve of future generations. The work of building and maintaining a just society is never complete, never finished, always requiring renewed commitment and effort. Looking at his children, at the students training in the temple courtyards, at the bustling city beyond where former enemies work together to build a better future, Anakin feels profound satisfaction in what has been accomplished. But more than that, he feels hope for what is yet to come. The Force has taught him that every ending is also a beginning. every conclusion a doorway to new possibilities. The galaxy's recovery from the conspiracy's devastation isn't just a return to what was before. It's the foundation for something that never existed before, something better and stronger, and more worthy of the potential that exists within every living being. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. During a mission to Ryloth, they encounter the former Queen Amidala, now Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo. Her presence on the war-torn world reflects her continued commitment to helping those most affected by the conflict, a dedication that has only grown stronger since her experiences during the Trade Federation invasion. Anakin's attraction to her is immediate and obvious, at least to his perceptive master. The young man tries to maintain professional composure during their official interactions, but his growing feelings are apparent to anyone with Force sensitivity. Where another Jedi might forbid such emotions or report them to the Council as evidence of dangerous attachment, Qui-Gon chooses a different path. Anakin, I can see that Senator Amidala has captured your interest. This is nothing to be ashamed of, but it is something you must understand fully if you're to navigate it wisely. The conversation takes place in private, away from Ahsoka and the other members of their team, allowing for the kind of honest discussion that has become central to Anakin's education. Master, the code says that attachment is forbidden. Anakin's voice carries a mixture of confusion and concern, torn between his growing feelings and his dedication to Jedi principles. I don't want to dishonor my training or betray the trust you've placed in me. But Qui-Gon shakes his head gently, his expression compassionate rather than judgmental. The code warns against attachment, yes, but it does not forbid love. The question is whether your feelings make you stronger or weaker, wiser or more foolish. Can you love Padme without needing to possess her? Can you care for her happiness, even if it means accepting choices you might not make yourself? These conversations help Anakin navigate his emotions with greater maturity than he could ever have achieved through suppression or denial. Qui-Gon's guidance teaches him that love itself isn't the problem. It's the fear of loss, the desire to control, the inability to accept that all things change that leads to the dark side. Over the months that follow, Anakin and Padme's relationship develops naturally, built on shared values and mutual respect rather than forbidden passion. Their connection deepens through conversations about politics and philosophy, through working together on humanitarian missions, through the gradual recognition that they complement each other's strengths and support each other's weaknesses. When they eventually decide to marry in secret, it's with Qui-Gon's knowledge and blessing. The ceremony on Naboo is small and beautiful, attended only by those who truly understand the depth of their connection. More importantly, Anakin approaches marriage not as a forbidden indulgence that must be hidden from his Jedi identity, but as another aspect of his growth as a person and as a servant of the Force. The secret is kept not because love is forbidden, but because the current political climate makes any relationship potentially dangerous. Senator Amidala's position makes her a target for separatist assassination attempts, while Anakin's growing reputation as a Jedi hero could make him vulnerable to manipulation through threats against those he cares about. Qui-Gon's acceptance of the relationship extends beyond mere tolerance to active support. He helps the young couple understand how their bond can strengthen rather than weaken their service to others, how their love can become a source of wisdom and compassion rather than possessiveness and fear. Love is the foundation of all life, Anakin. The Force itself flows from the connections between living beings, the care they show for each other, the sacrifices they make for the greater good. Your love for Padme, guided by wisdom and expressed through service, can become one of your greatest strengths as a Jedi. As the war drags on, Qui-Gon, Anakin, and Ahsoka's unique perspective begins to bear fruit in ways beyond their personal relationships. Their investigation into the conflict's hidden architects has uncovered evidence of Sith involvement that goes far beyond Count Dooku's obvious role as a separatist leader. Following paper trails through shell companies and dummy corporations, they trace funding sources that ultimately lead back to Coruscant itself. Bank transfers that should have been impossible under wartime regulations. Communication networks that bypass normal Senate oversight. Military contracts that benefit corporations with surprising connections to political leadership. The picture that emerges is of a vast conspiracy that controls both sides of the conflict, manipulating events to serve purposes that have nothing to do with the stated goals of either Republic or separatist forces. But the true identity of the conspiracy's leadership remains hidden, protected by layers of misdirection and false identities that have been built up over decades. Their investigation takes on new urgency when they discover evidence of a project called Order 66, contingency plans that would allow for the immediate elimination of Jedi leadership in the event of their betrayal of the Republic. The discovery is chilling in its implications, suggesting that someone has been planning for the possibility of turning the clone army against their Jedi commanders. Working with clone commanders who have begun to question their own behavioral programming, they uncover the truth about the inhibitor chips implanted in every clone soldier. These devices, supposedly designed to reduce aggressive behavior, actually contain hidden protocols that can override free will and force obedience to specific commands. The evidence is overwhelming, but it raises a terrible question: who has the authority to activate these hidden protocols? The investigation points toward the highest levels of Republic leadership, toward individuals with the power to issue military orders that cannot be questioned or refused. Qui-Gon's wisdom proves crucial in developing a response to this discovery. Rather than rushing to expose the conspiracy before they have enough evidence to convince skeptical authorities, he counsels patience and careful preparation. The enemy they face has been planning for years, perhaps decades. Defeating such a foe will require equal patience and superior wisdom. We're not just fighting a political conspiracy, my young apprentices. We're confronting something much darker, a corruption that reaches into the very heart of the Force itself. The Sith have returned, and they've been far more clever than anyone imagined. They haven't conquered through military might, but through subtle manipulation, turning our own institutions against us. The revelation adds new dimensions to their training and preparation. Ahsoka's education includes lessons in resistance techniques, methods for maintaining free will under coercion, and ways to recognize and counter dark side influence. Anakin's studies expand to include Sith, history, and philosophy, not to tempt him toward darkness, but to help him understand and defeat it. But it's the personal dimension of their struggle that proves most challenging. As their investigation progresses, evidence begins to point towards specific individuals within the Republic's leadership. The trail of corruption leads inexorably toward Chancellor Palpatine himself, the kindly grandfather figure who has been a mentor and friend to Anakin since childhood. The realization is devastating for Anakin, who has always seen Palpatine as a source of wisdom and support. The Chancellor's guidance during his early years as a Jedi, his apparent dedication to the Republic's welfare, his seemingly genuine concern for Anakin's growth and happiness, all of it takes on sinister, new meaning when viewed through the lens of their discoveries. Qui-Gon's response to his apprentice's emotional turmoil demonstrates the wisdom of his unconventional training methods. Rather than demanding that Anakin suppress his feelings of betrayal and confusion, he helps the young man work through these emotions in healthy ways. Your pain is understandable, Anakin. To discover that someone you trusted has been manipulating you for years would be devastating for anyone. But don't let that pain blind you to the lessons it can teach. How do we recognize deception in the future? How do we maintain our compassion for others while protecting ourselves from manipulation? The personal dimension of their struggle becomes even more complex when they realize that Palpatine's interest in Anakin goes beyond simple political manipulation. The Chancellor's attention to the young Jedi's development, his seemingly paternal concern, his efforts to isolate Anakin from traditional Jedi influence, all of it suggests a deeper, more sinister purpose. Evidence suggests that Palpatine has been grooming Anakin as a potential apprentice, seeking to turn the Chosen One to the dark side and use his power to establish permanent Sith dominance over the galaxy. The realization adds urgency to their mission while highlighting the personal stakes involved. But Anakin's training under Qui-Gon has prepared him for exactly this kind of test. His understanding of the Force's light and dark aspects, his emotional maturity developed through years of unconventional education, his support network of family and friends, all of these factors combine to make him resistant to the temptations that might have destroyed a more traditionally trained Jedi. The final phase of their investigation requires them to take enormous risks, gathering evidence that will convince even the most skeptical observers of the conspiracy's reality. Working with their network of allies, they document financial transactions, record private conversations, and compile testimony from individuals who have witnessed the conspiracy's operations firsthand. The work is dangerous, requiring them to operate under deep cover while maintaining their public roles as loyal Republic servants. Several times they come close to discovery, saved only by their growing skill in deception and misdirection. But gradually, they assemble a case that cannot be dismissed or explained away. When Palpatine finally reveals his true nature, it's not in a moment of desperation, as in the original timeline. Instead, Qui-Gon and Anakin have maneuvered him into a position where his Sith identity becomes undeniable, where the evidence of his manipulation is so overwhelming that even his most devoted supporters cannot ignore it. The confrontation comes when they present their evidence to a secret session of the Jedi Council, with proof so comprehensive that even the most skeptical masters cannot doubt its authenticity. Financial records, communication intercepts, testimony from clone commanders freed from their programming, all of it builds to an inescapable conclusion. For too long, we have been pieces on his board, dancing to rhythms he set. Qui-Gon's voice is calm but determined as he outlines their plan for exposing and defeating the conspiracy. Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who has orchestrated this entire war for his own purposes. His power base depends on continued conflict, on chaos that justifies his accumulation of emergency powers. If we can end the war and expose his manipulation simultaneously, his support will crumble. The plan they develop is complex, requiring coordination between multiple Jedi teams, clone units freed from their programming, and political allies who have maintained their integrity despite pressure to conform. The goal isn't just to defeat Palpatine in combat, but to expose his crimes so thoroughly that his entire network of supporters and collaborators is revealed. The execution begins with a carefully orchestrated series of revelations released simultaneously across the galaxy. Financial records showing the Chancellor's connections to both sides of the war, communication intercepts revealing his manipulation of key events, testimony from witnesses who can confirm his Sith identity, all of it floods the HoloNet at once, making suppression impossible. Palpatine's response is swift and vicious. Realizing that his careful plans are collapsing, he abandons subtlety in favor of direct action. Order 66 is activated, turning the clone army against their Jedi commanders across the galaxy. But the Jedi are prepared this time, warned by their allies and ready to defend themselves. The clone commanders who have been freed from their programming become crucial allies, helping to identify and neutralize their programmed comrades, while protecting Jedi who would otherwise be caught completely off guard. The battle for the galaxy's future becomes a three-way conflict. Sith loyalists trying to preserve their conspiracy, Republic forces freed from manipulation, and separatist armies confused by the sudden exposure of their secret leadership. The final confrontation with Darth Sidious is not a lightsaber duel in a Senate chamber, but a carefully orchestrated exposure of his crimes before the full Senate and the galactic media. Anakin and Qui-Gon present evidence of his manipulation of both sides, his orchestration of the Clone Wars, his systematic destruction of Republic institutions for personal gain. When Palpatine finally drops his mask and reveals his Sith nature, he faces not one angry young Jedi susceptible to manipulation, but a united Republic that finally sees him for what he truly island. The Emperor's lightning crackles through the Senate chamber, but it strikes not just Anakin and Qui-Gon, but clone troopers who have been freed from their inhibitor chips, senators who have chosen courage over fear, and Jedi who stand together against the darkness. Palpatine's power is great, greater than any individual Jedi could hope to match. But it cannot stand against the united will of those he sought to control. The combined strength of beings who have chosen light over darkness, freedom over tyranny, hope over despair. His defeat is not just a military victory, but a triumph of the principles he sought to destroy. In the aftermath, as the galaxy begins to heal from years of orchestrated conflict, the true extent of the Sith conspiracy becomes clear. Separatist worlds, freed from manipulation by dark side influence, begin negotiations for peaceful reintegration into a reformed republic. Clone armies, no longer controlled by hidden programming, choose their own destinies. Some remaining as Republic defenders, others becoming peacekeepers and rebuilders. The Jedi Order that emerges from this crisis is fundamentally different from the one that preceded it. Shaped by the lessons Qui-Gon taught about the living force, about the importance of understanding rather than simply following rules, the new generation of Jedi embraces flexibility and wisdom over rigid doctrine. Anakin takes his place among the Masters not as someone who has overcome darkness through suppression and denial, but as one who has faced temptation and chosen light through understanding and support. His marriage to Padme becomes a symbol of how love, properly understood, can strengthen rather than weaken a Jedi's connection to the Force. Their children, Luke and Leia, grow up in a galaxy at peace, raised by parents who understand both the power of the Force and the importance of emotional balance. The twins' training begins early but proceeds naturally, guided by Anakin's hard-won wisdom about the dangers of suppressing natural feelings and the importance of addressing problems before they become crises. Qui-Gon, older now but still vibrant, watches his former apprentice with pride as Anakin teaches the next generation of Jedi the lessons of the Clone Wars about the importance of questioning authority, investigating hidden motives, and maintaining emotional balance under pressure becomes central to Jedi education. The galaxy is not perfect, but it is healing. The scars left by years of orchestrated conflict will take generations to fully mend, but the foundation for that healing has been laid. Democracy is restored. The Sith are truly extinct for the first time in a millennium, and the Force flows in balance through all living things. Anakin stands with his wife and children in the rebuilt Jedi Temple, looking out over a Coruscant where former clone troopers work alongside former separatist droids to construct a better future. The sunset paints the sky in shades of gold and orange, and the Force itself seems to whisper with contentment. The Chosen One has indeed brought balance to the Force, not through destruction and fall as prophecy might have suggested, but through wisdom and growth, through love properly understood and courageously expressed. The future stretches ahead, bright with possibility and hope. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.